The first notification didn't even look dramatic. It was a quiet gray banner sliding across the top of her phone screen while she was standing in the kitchen. Your account has been temporarily restricted due to unusual activity. She stared at it. For a second, she thought it was spam. Then her husband walked in holding printed bank statements. Not one page, not two, a stack. He wasn't yelling. That was worse. He laid them on the counter between them like evidence in a courtroom. I need you to explain this. Her heart started racing, not because of the numbers, because she knew exactly which transfers he was looking at. Small ones at first, then bigger, then frequent. The kitchen felt smaller. She didn't deny it. She didn't panic. She said something else. You don't understand. He's real. He just can't prove it yet. Silence. He blinked at her like she'd spoken a different language. Real? He repeated. He's not like the others, she said. There are a lot of fakes out there. I know that. But this is different. He flipped to the final page. Different? His voice cracked. This is everything. Not everything, but enough. Enough to matter. Enough to trigger the bank. Enough to fracture something that had been stable for over a decade. And while they stood there, marriage cracking in real time, her phone buzzed again. A message preview lit up the screen. Don't let anyone turn you against me. She didn't open it. She didn't have to. She already knew what it would say. He always knew when something was wrong. Her husband noticed the notification. Is that him? She didn't answer. Instead, she whispered something that would echo long after the money was gone. You're trying to make me lose the only person who's ever truly understood me. That's when he realized this wasn't just about transfers. This wasn't just about numbers. This wasn't even just about betrayal. It was about belief. And belief is harder to break than a bank account. The bank had already frozen 2 of their accounts. Credit cards were under review. A fraud specialist had left a voicemail asking for clarification about recurring payments to unverified digital wallets. They hadn't even called the police yet, but something irreversible had already happened. Not the first payment, not the second, not even the largest. The irreversible damage was this. She was defending him. Defending someone she had never met, never video called, never touched. Over the man standing in front of her, her husband tried one last time. Who is he? She hesitated, then said the name carefully, like it mattered, like it was sacred. He's not who you think. He's using a private account. Private. Secret. Hidden. The word hung in the air. Her husband felt something colder than anger, fear. Because whatever this was, it had gone far deeper than he thought. He looked at the statements again, the numbers blurred. There was something else he hadn't told her yet. Something worse than the bank freeze. Something that arrived that morning in an email neither of them had opened. But we're not there yet. Right now, all we know is this. The money is gone. The accounts are flagged. The marriage is cracking. And she is still protecting him. How does someone get here? How does a rational adult, someone who balances budgets, schedules dentist appointments, remembers birthdays, end up defending a stranger over their own spouse? To understand the damage, we have to go back, months earlier, before the notifications, before the statements, before the word restricted, back to the moment she first felt seen, and didn't realize that was the beginning of the trap. 6 months earlier, nothing looked broken. That was the problem. Nothing dramatic, no explosive fights, no infidelity, no crisis, just routine. Morning alarms, work, groceries, dinner, and television, sleep, repeat. If you had asked her whether she was unhappy, she would have said no. If you had asked whether she felt fulfilled, she might have paused, not because her husband was cruel. He wasn't. He was steady, predictable, responsible. But somewhere between bills and birthdays, she had stopped feeling interesting, stopped feeling chosen, stopped feeling visible. It's subtle when it happens. No announcement, no siren, just a quiet erosion of excitement. One night, after dinner, she was scrolling, mindlessly at first, fitness videos, home decor, clips of creators she followed. One of them had a blue check mark, confident, charismatic, always looking straight into the camera like he was speaking directly to you. His name was Thane Rivers. She didn't follow him obsessively, but she'd watched enough to recognize the face, the charm, the voice. That night, a notification appeared in her message requests. "Hey, this is my private account. I don't usually do this." Her first instinct? Delete. Celebrities don't message strangers, everyone knows that. But curiosity is louder than logic. She opened it. The profile picture was different from the public one, less polished, more casual. The bio read, "Backup only for real ones." She rolled her eyes, probably fake. She typed one sentence. "Is this actually you?" 3 dots appeared immediately. "Yes, I'm tired of fake people. I saw your comment. You seem genuine." That word, genuine. It landed. He didn't compliment her looks, didn't send anything explicit, didn't push. He asked about her day, her job, her hobbies. It felt strangely normal, which made it dangerous. For the next few days, he didn't ask for anything. He just listened. About her stressful week, about how predictable everything felt, about how sometimes she felt like life had flattened into routine. His responses were measured. "You deserve more excitement than that. You don't seem like someone meant for small living. I don't talk to fans like this. Please keep this between us." That last line created a boundary, and secrecy creates intimacy faster than romance ever could. She didn't tell her husband, not because she thought it was wrong, but because it felt private, special, like a harmless fantasy. He never rushed, never pressured, never crossed a line. Instead, he mirrored her. If she was tired, he was supportive. If she was stressed, he was attentive. If she joked, he joked. And gradually, something shifted. She started checking her phone in the mornings before saying good morning to her husband. She waited for his messages, anticipated them. The routine of her real life stayed the same. But now there was color layered over it. And that's how grooming works when it's done well. It doesn't replace your life. It enhances it. At least at first. Weeks passed. He moved the conversation off the platform. "Too many imposters here," he said. "Too many people watching." He suggested Telegram, encrypted, private, disappearing messages. It sounded technical, secure, important. She hesitated for a second, then downloaded it. That was the first quiet step away from normalcy. Still, nothing looked dangerous. No money, no emergency, no crisis, just daily messages. "Good morning. How did you sleep? You deserve someone who really sees you." And slowly, without announcing it, he became the first person she told things to. Before her husband, before her friends, before anyone. Not because she trusted him more, but because he responded faster. And sometimes, speed feels like intimacy. If someone had looked at her life from the outside, they would have seen nothing alarming. She was still present, still cooking dinner, still going to work, still laughing at family gatherings. But privately, a new emotional thread had formed, one that felt separate, safe, and controlled. What she didn't notice was how carefully he was positioning himself as the only one who truly understood her. What she didn't question was why a public figure would need secrecy from the public. What she didn't see was that the stage was being built, and soon there would be a moment, a single moment, where everything could have stopped, if only she had listened to the doubt, because it did show up, just once. And she pushed it away. The doubt didn't arrive dramatically. It came in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday. They had been messaging for nearly 3 weeks, every day, morning and night, sometimes voice notes, sometimes long paragraphs about purpose, ambition, how exhausting it was to live under public scrutiny. He never sent explicit content, never demanded anything, never pushed too hard, which made him feel different from every obvious scam she'd ever heard about. That afternoon, during her lunch break, she decided to test something, not aggressively, not accusingly, just casually. "Why don't we FaceTime tonight?" she typed. "It would be easier than all this texting." There was a pause, longer than usual, 5 minutes, 10. Then the typing bubble appeared, stopped, appeared again. Finally, the message came through. "I wish I could." Wish, not can't. Wish. She felt a small tightening in her chest. "Why can't you?" she asked. This time the response came faster. You have to understand something. I'm not just a content creator. I do work you wouldn't expect. Government work. She stared at the screen. Government work? What kind? She asked, half amused. Another pause. I'm attached to a covert unit under the state of Minnesota. If my identity is compromised while I'm on assignment, people get hurt. It was cinematic, almost theatrical. Her first reaction wasn't fear. It was disbelief. She actually smiled. That sounds like a movie, she replied. The response came instantly this time. If you don't believe me, that's okay. I thought you were different, but I can't risk everything just to prove something to someone who doesn't trust me. There it was. The shift. Not defensive, disappointed. He wasn't arguing. He was withdrawing. The emotional temperature changed in a single sentence. She felt it. That subtle panic of potentially losing access. 3 weeks of daily connection. 3 weeks of being seen. About to disappear because she asked for proof. Her logic whispered, "This is ridiculous." Her emotion shouted louder, "Don't push him away." "I'm not saying I don't trust you," she typed quickly. "I just thought it would be nice to see you." "I see you," he replied. "Every day, that should be enough." That line landed harder than it should have, because it reframed the issue, not as suspicion, but as rejection. If she insisted on proof, she wasn't being cautious, she was being disloyal. He followed it with something even more strategic. "There are so many fake accounts pretending to be me. I trusted you with this private line. I wouldn't do that if I didn't feel something real." Now the doubt felt ugly, like she had insulted him, like she had cheapened something sacred. The red flag was obvious in hindsight. A public figure, claiming secret government work, refusing a simple video call, turning a reasonable request into a test of loyalty. But in the moment, it didn't feel like a red flag. It felt like intimacy under threat. She imagined him cutting contact, blocking her, vanishing, going back to his real life, and her world returning to routine gray. She didn't want that. So she did something small, something almost invisible. She apologized. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to question you." The reply came softer now. "It's okay. I just need you to understand that my life isn't simple. I can't move like normal people." Normal people. The implication hung there. She wasn't normal anymore. She was in something elevated, something rare, something secret. He ended the conversation that night with, "Thank you for trusting me." Not, "I'll prove it," not, "Let me show you," but "Thank you for trusting me." And that was the pivot. That was the moment everything could have stopped. All she had to do was insist, just once more. "Show me." Instead, she chose belief over verification, because asking for proof now felt like risking the connection, and she wasn't ready to lose it. That's how manipulation hides. It doesn't demand surrender, it invites loyalty. After that day, she never asked for a video call again, and he never offered. The doubt didn't disappear, it just went quiet, buried under daily attention. Buried under compliments, buried under carefully crafted vulnerability about how hard his life was. But something else changed too. A few days later, he sent a message that felt different. He hesitated before typing it, said he hated asking, said he wouldn't if he had any other option. And this time, it wasn't about trust. It was about help. And this is where curiosity turns into commitment, because the first transfer wasn't large. It didn't feel like risk. It felt like support. And once support becomes financial, the exit door gets heavier. He didn't ask for money immediately. That would have broken the illusion. Instead, he complained about something small. "I'm exhausted," he wrote one evening. "Been running around all day and still haven't eaten." She responded playfully, "Go get food." A pause. Then, "It's not that simple right now." That was new. Up until then, he had been controlled, confident, elevated. Now there was strain in his tone. She asked what he meant. He explained carefully. He was between accounts. Operational funds were restricted. He couldn't use his main banking profile while on assignment. It sounded technical, temporary, inconvenient, not desperate. He didn't ask directly. He just described the inconvenience long enough for her to feel it. Then came the line designed to disarm her. "I hate even telling you this. You shouldn't have to worry about my problems." That sentence flipped the power dynamic. Now helping him wouldn't feel manipulated. It would feel chosen. She typed what he was waiting for. "How much do you need?" There was hesitation in his reply. Strategic hesitation. "Honestly, just a couple hundred to get through the week. I'll pay you back as soon as everything clears. $200, not thousands, not life-changing. $200 is dinner out. $200 is groceries. $200 is harmless." She stared at the message. A whisper in her head resurfaced. Why would someone successful need this? But that whisper was faint now, drowned out by weeks of consistency, weeks of intimacy, weeks of being told she was different. "You don't have to," he added. "I'll figure something out." That was the final push. She didn't want him to figure something out. She wanted to be the solution. She opened her banking app. The screen felt colder than usual. She hesitated over the transfer screen. A recipient name. A digital wallet ID he provided. No full name. No institution she recognized. Just a string of characters. "Are you sure this is correct?" she asked. "Yes," he replied instantly. "It's the only secure channel I can use right now." Secure. There was that word again. She typed in the amount, $200. Her thumb hovered over the confirmation button. It didn't feel like betrayal. It didn't feel like theft. It felt like support. She pressed send. The confirmation screen appeared. A transfer complete. Nothing happened, no alarm, no fraud alert, no explosion, just silence. Her phone buzzed seconds later. "You have no idea what this means to me." He sent a heart emoji, then a voice note. His voice, warm, low, familiar from videos, thanked her personally. "You're the only person I can trust right now." And something inside her shifted. The transaction itself wasn't the irreversible damage. It was the emotional reinforcement afterward. He didn't just accept the money, for he elevated her because of it. "You're not like other people. You actually care. You're different." The $200 wasn't a loss. It was an investment in identity. She wasn't just a fan anymore. She was essential. That night, she felt closer to him than ever. The next morning, he messaged earlier than usual. "Good morning. How did you sleep? You're incredible." The flow didn't change. If anything, it intensified. 3 days later, he mentioned something else. His phone had malfunctioned, and he couldn't risk logging into certain accounts on unsecured devices. "It's embarrassing," he said. "I should have this handled." She didn't hesitate as long this time. This wasn't a red flag. It was continuity. Of course his life would be complicated. Of course someone in covert operations couldn't walk into a retail store. The second transfer was larger, $800, still manageable, still explainable, still invisible inside a normal household budget if you weren't looking closely. See, after each transfer, the gratitude deepened. Voice notes became longer. He called her my peace. He said she grounded him. The commitment was no longer financial, it was psychological. Because now, if he were fake, she wasn't just wrong, she was foolish. And the brain resists that possibility aggressively. The first $200 had crossed a line. The second solidified it. By the time the third request arrived, more urgent, more emotional, she didn't analyze it the same way. She framed it differently. "This isn't a scam. This is temporary. He'll pay me back. And even if he doesn't, this is what people do when they care about someone." But what she didn't see was that every payment wasn't just moving money, it was moving power. And once power shifts quietly, it's hard to reclaim it without losing something much bigger than cash. For a while, nothing went wrong. No bank flags, no confrontation, no collapse. In fact, things actually felt better, stronger, more stable. Which is why what happened next felt so confusing. Because just when it seemed like everything had settled, the illusion improved. And that's what made it dangerous. If you had checked her bank statements a month after the first transfer, you wouldn't have seen disaster. You would have seen a pattern, incremental amounts, spread out, explained away as normal spending. The first two transfers hadn't triggered anything dramatic. No fraud alerts, no locked cards, no immediate consequences. And that absence of punishment became proof. Proof that it wasn't reckless, proof that it wasn't catastrophic, proof that maybe, just maybe, it really was temporary. But the bigger shift wasn't in her bank account, it was in their dynamic. After the second payment, his tone changed subtly. He was warmer, more vulnerable. He told her things he claimed he'd never told anyone, how isolating his work was, how hard it was to trust people, how lonely it felt living a double life. "Now, you make it easier," he told her one night. "You make everything feel normal." That word again, normal. Only now she wasn't the one longing for it. He was. The emotional reversal was strategic. She wasn't chasing him anymore. He was leaning on her. The requests didn't stop, but they reframed. Instead of, "I need help," it became, "I hate that you're the only one I can turn to," which sounds different, but lands the same. When he mentioned needing funds for travel clearance, it didn't feel like escalation. It felt like progress. Progress meant proximity, and proximity meant payoff. "Once this assignment wraps," he promised, "I'll finally be able to visit. No more secrets." He painted it carefully. An airport arrival. A quiet embrace. A life without encrypted apps. The transfers grew. $800 became $1,200. $1,200 became $2,500. But because they weren't all at once, they didn't feel seismic. They felt like stepping stones. And every time she hesitated, he reinforced the illusion. "I don't want you struggling because of me. I'll repay everything the second my accounts are unlocked." He even sent what looked like documentation once, a screenshot of a banking dashboard showing a frozen account with a large balance, 6 figures, more than she'd ever seen attached to her own name. "You think I'd need your help if I had access to this?" he wrote. It looked official, professional fonts, realistic formatting, transaction logs. She didn't know it could be fabricated. She didn't think to reverse image search it, because by then, trust wasn't logical. It was emotional. And emotionally, things had never felt more stable. He didn't disappear after payments. He didn't pressure aggressively. He didn't threaten. He thanked her. He reassured her. He reminded her that this was temporary. That's what makes false recovery so powerful. Nothing explodes. Nothing collapses. So, in fact, things seemed to improve. He started talking about specific dates. 2 months. That's all I need. He mentioned meeting halfway, somewhere discreet, somewhere private. He talked about how he would make it up to her, not just financially, emotionally. "You've carried me through this," he said. That line anchored her, because now the narrative wasn't, she sent money. The narrative was, she supported someone she loved through hardship, and the human brain defends that story aggressively. At home, her husband noticed small changes. More time on her phone, late-night typing. A new app he didn't recognize. When he asked casually, she brushed it off. "Just a group chat." He didn't push. There was no reason to, yet. Meanwhile, the transfers continued. He always had an explanation ready. Security clearance delay, account review, logistical emergency. And every time she wondered if this was too much, he sent something grounding, a voice note, her name spoken softly, a reminder of their future. The illusion wasn't chaotic. It was structured, predictable, consistent. Or that's what kept her calm. If this were a scam, wouldn't it feel frantic? Wouldn't it feel messy? Wouldn't there be obvious threats? Instead, it felt patient, measured, stable. She told herself something quietly one night as she reviewed her account balance. This is almost over. And for the first time since the first transfer, she believed the hardest part was behind her. What she didn't realize was that the most dangerous part of the scam wasn't the money leaving. It was the secrets forming. Because while she thought the storm had passed, something else had already started building, not on his end, but in her own house. And when it surfaced, it wouldn't be about $200 or $800 or even $2,500. It would be about something much harder to quantify. Trust. The first sign that something was wrong didn't come from her husband. It came from the bank, a voicemail, professional, neutral, controlled. "Hi, this is the Fraud Prevention Department. We've noticed a pattern of transfers to an unverified digital wallet. Please contact us immediately to confirm authorization." She listened to it twice. Her pulse quickened, not because she thought it was fraud, but because she didn't want anyone looking too closely. She called back, confirmed the payments were intentional. Yes, I authorized those, the representative asked carefully. Do you personally know the recipient? Yes, she said. There was a pause on the other end. Have you met them? She hesitated. Yes. The lie came out smoothly. Too smoothly. The representative warned her gently about ongoing romance-based financial exploitation schemes. She felt irritation rise. They're not exploiting me, she said. I know what I'm doing. The bank lifted the temporary hold. Case closed. But something subtle shifted. Now there was an outside voice questioning her reality. She didn't tell him about the call at first. When she finally did, his response came quickly. I told you this would happen. What do you mean? They monitor everything. If they see unusual movement, it complicates my situation. That's why I didn't want to involve traditional banking. The framing was immediate. The problem wasn't the transfers. The problem was surveillance. He followed it with something chillingly effective. You didn't tell them my name, did you? Suddenly, she felt protective. No, of course not. Good, he said, because if this triggers an internal review, it doesn't just affect me, it affects the people I work with. The stakes escalated quietly. It wasn't just about money anymore. Now there were others. Now there was risk. She felt responsible, and responsibility deepens commitment. At home, tension thickened. Her husband noticed the fraud alert letter that arrived in the mail. He opened it by accident. At least that's what he said. He brought it to her with confusion on his face. Oh, why is the bank asking about external crypto wallets? Her chest tightened. It's nothing, she said quickly. Nothing? It's just an investment thing. He frowned. What investment? She hadn't prepared for that question, so she deflected. It's temporary. I handled it. The lie layered itself over the first lie, and something in her tone made him suspicious, not angry, just alert. That night, while she was in the shower, he glanced at her phone on the nightstand. A notification lit up. A telegram. A name he didn't recognize. He didn't open it, but he remembered it. The next week, another complication arrived. A chargeback dispute on one of the transfers. The platform flagged the wallet as linked to previous reports of financial misconduct. This time, the bank didn't just call. They restricted both joint accounts pending review. That's when the damage became shared. Bills bounced. A payment to their credit card failed. Her husband confronted her again, not yelling, not accusing, just asking. Is someone taking advantage of you? The question felt insulting. I'm not stupid, she snapped. He held up the bank notification. This isn't about stupid. This is about unusual behavior. She felt cornered. And when people feel cornered, they choose sides, instead of stepping back. She defended him. He's not who you think. That sentence widened the crack in their marriage more than any transfer ever could. The complication wasn't financial. It was relational. She started deleting messages, turning off notifications, using a second email to create new accounts when old ones got flagged. Not because he told her to, but because she wanted to protect the connection. That's when the true secondary damage began. Secrecy, isolation, division. Her husband, sensing distance, tried something different. He researched the name she'd mentioned once in passing, found dozens of impersonation warnings. Videos from the verified creator stating clearly, I do not message fans privately. I will never ask for money. He printed screenshots, laid them on the table. She didn't look at them. They're fake, she said. He said this would happen, people trying to ruin him. Her husband felt something shift inside him, not just fear, not just anger, but realization. This wasn't about convincing her with evidence. This was about breaking an emotional bond. And emotional bonds don't respond to screenshots. Meanwhile, the scammer's tone evolved again, more urgent, more strained. There's a clearance issue, a delay, a temporary hold, and then a larger request, not hundreds, not a couple thousand, something bigger, framed as the final hurdle, the last obstacle before everything resets, before repayment, before meeting, before normal life. She stared at the number. This one felt different. He sensed hesitation. I would never ask if it wasn't critical. She felt trapped between two worlds, the husband in front of her, and the voice in her phone, one demanding proof, the other offering destiny. The bank restrictions were still in place, accounts under review, joint finances exposed, and yet she was considering one more transfer, because now it wasn't about helping him, it was about proving to herself that all of this meant something. What she didn't realize was that the true scale of the damage hadn't even surfaced yet. Not the total amount, not the duration, not the ripple effect already unfolding behind the scenes. Because while she was fighting to preserve the illusion, something far worse had already been set in motion, and it wasn't reversible. The collapse didn't happen with a bang. It happened in fragments, in moments that seemed small but carried the weight of everything she had ignored. Her husband had started keeping the bank notices on the counter, each one piling up like layers of inevitability. He wasn't yelling, he wasn't even arguing. He just laid them down one by one and waited. Then one evening, it all snapped. A new email arrived, not a polite fraud notice, not a review request. This was urgent. Red letters, flags, automatic holds. Your accounts have been frozen pending investigation of recurring transfers to high-risk unverified wallets. Please contact us immediately. She froze. Her hands shook. The scammer had texted right before she saw the notice. It's okay. This is just a minor complication. Don't worry, I'm working on it. She stared at the screen, seeing the voice note play the same reassuring tone she had heard hundreds of times before. But now, every word sounded different. Hollow. Her husband's gaze met hers. Do you see this? He asked quietly. For the first time, she didn't respond with defense. She just looked. See, at the statements, at the email, at the phone. The first pang of fear pierced through the months of rationalization. The transfers, small at first, were now hundreds of times more than she had imagined. $2,500, $5,000, $10,000. By now she couldn't even calculate it in her head. She wanted to cry. She wanted to run. She wanted to delete the evidence, delete the account, delete the part of herself that had ever believed in him. And yet when her phone buzzed again, she hesitated. Please don't let anyone take this away from us. I can't do this without you. It was a plea. Soft. Vulnerable. Human. She had defended him over her spouse. Now, for the first time, she realized the cost. Not just financial, not just trust. Her marriage, once stable, was fractured. Conversations now carried tension, silence, and unspoken accusation. Friends had noticed her distance. She was lying more, isolating herself, protecting a phantom. The collapse wasn't a single event. It was a cascade. Accounts frozen, bank disputes piling up, emotional arguments slicing through the household, her self-perception eroding. She felt naive, stupid, and complicit all at once. Every familiar reassurance from him now sounded like a mockery. She tried to reach out to the him she believed in, only to be met with silence. The messages were slower, the excuses longer. And yet, her attachment remained, wired in by months of consistency and praise. For the first time, she cried not just over the money, but over the idea that someone could manipulate intimacy so completely, over the loss of certainty, of trust, of herself. The husband tried to help her see reason, tried to show her the evidence, screenshots from the verified creator, warnings about impersonators, proof she had been deceived. She looked at it, briefly, and then turned away. Because admitting the truth would mean admitting she had been wrong. She had defended a stranger over her spouse. She had lost a year of belief, validation, and emotional investment. And that admission hurt more than the money ever could. The collapse didn't announce itself with drama. It whispered, crept, and finally screamed in her chest. The cost wasn't just dollars. It was trust. It was marriage. It was the perception of reality. And even now, with all proof before her, she hesitated. Because sometimes the mind protects belief harder than it protects bank accounts. Because sometimes the victim clings to illusion longer than the scammer ever could. The cascade was complete, everything had fallen, and she wasn't sure if she would be able to pick up the pieces. The money was gone, the accounts were frozen, the evidence was undeniable. Yet the emotional wreckage stretched far beyond the numbers. She slept poorly, if at all. Dreams were replaced with scrolling messages, voice notes, and imagined conversations with him. Every morning, she woke with a pit in her stomach, reaching for the phone that had been the source of both comfort and destruction. Trust, once simple and reflexive, became a labyrinth. She questioned her judgment on everything. Did she really know her husband, her friends, herself? Was she inherently gullible, or had the world simply learned to exploit her subtle vulnerabilities? Public embarrassment crept in quietly. Friends who had noticed her late-night messages and secretive behavior began asking questions. Casual curiosity became suspicion. She laughed it off, but the laughter was thin. She avoided gatherings, she declined calls, she withdrew, not just to protect herself, but to hide the shame of having been manipulated so completely. Isolation followed naturally. Hours that had been spent laughing with colleagues or catching up with family were now spent reviewing old chats, trying to make sense of how weeks of daily attention, reassurance, and praise could twist into months of exploitation. The quiet corners of her home became her confessional, her prison, and her therapy session all at once. The betrayal was dual. Financial, yes. But even more insidious was the emotional betrayal. Her own brain, trained over months to prioritize his words over reality, had conspired against her. Every time her husband tried to intervene, she felt defensive, protective. The illusion had become more real than the facts. She began second-guessing everything, every online message, every unexpected phone notification, every act of kindness from friends. Were they genuine, or was she imagining the trust she had once felt so effortlessly? Sleep, attention, and focus eroded. At work, she missed deadlines. At home, conversations became strained. Her spouse, once patient, now reacted with a mixture of worry and frustration. They were navigating the aftermath together, but in parallel, her guilt and his disappointment existed in separate orbits. Self-blame became a constant companion. "Why didn't I see it?" she whispered aloud more than once. "Why did I trust him? How could I defend someone I've never met over the person who stood by me all these years?" And yet, she couldn't entirely abandon belief. Even after screenshots from the verified creator were laid before her, even after watching archived warnings about impersonators, part of her clung to the illusion, not out of hope, but out of grief. Grief for what she thought she had: connection, excitement, validation. The psychological toll was subtle but powerful. Persistent anxiety about online interactions, difficulty trusting authority or evidence even when undeniable, episodes of dissociation, zoning out during routine tasks, hypervigilance around finances and communication, guilt layered with confusion, shame layered with self-doubt. And while the scammer's voice was gone, it lingered in the patterns he had imprinted: daily validation, attention, secrecy, and praise. The loss wasn't just monetary, it was structural. Her perception of relationships, of trust, of her own judgment, all altered. Even in recovery, there remained a quiet echo, the fear that she could be drawn into a similar trap again, that someone, somewhere, could exploit that same combination of loneliness, hope, and desire to feel chosen. And as days turned into weeks, she realized something haunting. The most damaging part of the scam wasn't the money she sent. It was the belief she had surrendered. The illusion of intimacy had cost her far more than any dollar amount ever could. Months later, when the adrenaline had faded and the bank notices had finally stopped arriving, she sat alone at the kitchen table. The house was quiet, the hum of the refrigerator the only accompaniment to her thoughts. She held the printed screenshots, the archived warnings, the verified statements from the real Thane Rivers, and yet she hesitated. It wasn't about questioning their authenticity. The truth was undeniable. She had been deceived. But truth, she realized, was only half the story. The other half was hers. She thought of the months of messages, the voice notes that had felt intimate, the small requests for help that had escalated into impossible sums. She remembered the warmth of attention she had craved, the thrill of feeling chosen, the illusion of a connection she couldn't find in her routine life. And suddenly, the shame and the insight coexisted. Either she understood something subtle, almost cruel. It wasn't just that she had been scammed. She had allowed herself to be positioned as the only person who could help someone she never met. She had sacrificed rational caution for emotional validation. It was a painful lesson in human psychology. The quiet realization settled in her chest. Vulnerability can be weaponized, intimacy can be fabricated, and belief, once earned, can feel heavier than gold. But it also brought a strange clarity. She no longer blamed herself entirely. She had been targeted expertly. The manipulation had been layered, slow, and designed to exploit a natural human desire to be seen, to be chosen, to be needed. In that stillness, she made a vow. Not a vow to erase the past, but a vow to carry the lesson forward, to check before trusting, to pause before acting, to recognize the difference between genuine connection and manufactured affection. And yet, she allowed herself one haunting thought to linger, whispered in the quiet. I was loved, just not by the person I thought. The illusion had ended. The money was lost. The trust fractured. The psychological scars remained, but she could see the horizon, not because she had regained what was taken, but because she finally understood the mechanism of the deception. And in understanding, there was power. Not to undo the past, but to navigate the future, to recognize the subtle signs, to protect the self without shutting the heart. The screen remained dark. No new messages, no notifications, just quiet, and finally just enough peace to breathe again.